Sorry to interrupt the lesson.
That's okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, why not? Yes, go ahead.
Hey, art teachers.
Hey.
Do you have any white paper that the senior class could borrow and reimburse you for? And I'm thinking like poster, like you know, the
banner
big
paper.
banner paper.
Yeah, there should be a roll back there.
You guys are awesome. They'll reimburse you guys if you know for whatever the cost is.
Just the whole roll.
Yeah, do you want? You can take whatever.
Okay, so I mean, what's just doing that? So
I think that's good though, but it's hard.
so the next one. What do you argue?
Yeah,
like
you
what
have
do
to
you
balance
argue
it,
about?
like in a perfect situation, sure, you can stop every kid and be like, no, do it this way. And you know, like you were only working with 2 kids, so it was easy because you could stop them and do it with just the 2 of them. But if you have a whole class of 30 kids, that would be impossible. And then the other kids have to stay interested in it.
Do you have an account?
Enough to do it over and over.
Art supplies account.
Trying to do it, and it just gets.
So they'll just transfer.
Okay. Yeah. No.
So it's hard to balance. I mean, that's, in a perfect world, yeah, that's you know what you can try to do, but it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I agree with you. That's something that I noticed for me when I have when I have a
just buy us
class
lunch or something.
Yeah, we'll pay.
when I have my class of like 10 students, it's a lot easier for me to sit down with them and go through. But when I have 35 students, it can be quite challenging just to get them sometimes to all be on the same page.
Yeah.
You know, so we were going over about what about that video you'd argue about comparative to what we do.
Well, of course, he said that it was I forget what term he used, but whatever school like it's not it's like a private school or like I would associate it with like a Montessori school or something. Where you do like student-led stuff or whatever. But not saying that we don't do that.
It's more like an exploratory type school.
And do they also probably have their art class either every day or several times a week? Whereas, I mean, in an elementary school, you're only going to see them like once a week, maybe. I mean, here it's a little different because it's high school and we get to see them every day or every other day, which, is good for the feedback, but
that might not even have been art either. That might have been just like
a regular science class.
So the art. So just so I can understand from y'all's point, because I know for me, my argument is I completely agree with the idea that it would be so nice to actually stop my kids while they're trying to create a scene and say, okay, let's just do this first part. Do it for me. Okay, why don't you try to do this? All right, do it again. Try to do this, and maybe go through. You said 6 drafts. Go through it a couple times and then do it again, or have the kids go around and critique each other. Like I agree with that because I can't be around it. Like with my class of 35, it's impossible for me to have all. I mean, they probably just won't do that. My argument is the large classes. I don't know if that's the same thing with you guys. It seems our students don't seem to all want to do that. Now, that's the challenge. So that would be your argument, trying to get them to actually get that in depth with it,
and have the time to do it. Because if you're only seeing them, every other day or whatever, it's hard to spend that much time on one thing. Because then you have to move on.
Oh, sure. And they didn't of course say the time frame in this.
Well,
I can't imagine the boy just drew it out while everybody stared at him.
Well,
He probably took it home and brought it back.
Well, and it might have been a whole day, but because I know at my boys' school, they might do one thing all day. Like if that's what they're working on, that's what they're going to work on.
Right.
So he could have been taking that back to the class or whatever and just done that all day.
Yeah.
So.
But it's not really.
So.
Realistic, I guess.
Trying to tie that in for us, what parts of the video would you like to aspire to? What parts would you like to take from the video and try to be more like that in your class? And I guess assuming again that he was talking about a teacher who is doing having their students do this, but from a feedback standpoint, what do you think?
Well, I think I would like the same thing that you were talking about, just having them critique themselves more and having them, I really keep trying to push this idea of breaking down the understanding that we have, being more specific, that's it. Being more specific with what they're seeing, being more observant with what they're seeing. And I think that even though I try to make sure that I get that across, I feel feel like, you know, there's more I could do. So that would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think?
I think just not accepting, you know, we're not letting them accept and be finished with what they like say, okay, I'm done. It's like, well, no, like, you know, having them, like, driving them to actually want to see it to the finish and the best possible thing that they can do. Because a lot of times they'll just say no, but and
Absolutely.
you're like, no, you know, you can do this or that, or you know, try this, or and then they're like, well, you know, it's
Well, that happened.
difficult.
That happened to me the other day. I told the kids, I showed them we were doing fight choreography. You know, and we had to put that into a scene, and they got a lesson on how to do it. And then I told them, okay, so we're going to group up, and you're going to put a fight scene into a story. And then I gave them 2 base words like love and revenge, and they had to create a scene based on love and revenge with fight choreography in it. Well, then after they did that, they came and presented to the class, and then after that, I gave them feedback. But then they were done. And oftentimes, I will walk around and try to help out where I can. But I realized that they did it once, and then I gave them feedback after it was done, and I didn't ever ask them, okay, we're going to do the same thing this time, use the feedback. You know, like, if their backs are to the audience, you know, turn your back away, and turn your back, you know, turn your face. So, like, for you all, do you do that? I mean, do you give them a lesson, even with a photography? I mean, do you tell them how to do a shot or something, have them go do it, critique it, and then we move on to the next project? Or do you find that you actually, because like I said, what I'm noticing with them, and we're going to talk about figuring out maybe how to modify it for us, but talking about how do we modify it for us. So
Trying to get the advantage.
how about, so do you do that? The way you have them do it over and over again, or give them feedback and have them do it again, or is it?
Well, the projects have a tendency to take so much time. You know, like a drawing like that's taken them several weeks to accomplish. And by the time they get a certain amount finished, they've already put so much effort into it, and you are saying, okay, well, make sure you remember to do this, or make sure you need to adjust this, and so you get them to make all of these little adjustments. But if there's a large chunk of time that you can't get to them, then they create, you know, something else that sort of goes off on their own way.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just not always enough. Maybe there's not enough where I feel like they kind of keep going. You think they understand it, and then they produce it, and then, you know, their project's halfway finished, and then they come and critique it, and then like they have to redo their entire half of the project, and you want it to be due in a certain amount of time. So it's just it can be
Well, and this
with
is,
that.
we were just talking about what, you know, if we're like what you were doing in your class with things, and that's a really good point. And I think I even not talked to my wife about math, because she's a math teacher, and I said, well, how would that even work for math teachers? You know, and she said, well, instead of having them do 30 problems for their homework, have them do 1. And then critique that and work on that, and then have them do another, instead of having them do this whole thing. And then because if you
wrong,
do, if you
have
right,
to go back over
and we don't have that time.
We don't have the time.
We don't have, even if it's even with our classes, even if every day, we don't have that time. Plus, we don't have the time because we have so many students.
Yeah.
And each one of those students
then
takes a lot. Right, right.
And then they're like, forget it.
That's
You know, like I have to start all the way over. Forget it. You know, or if they've learned it wrong, then they have to relearn it and forget what they've learned wrong. So it's hard.
They lose motivation very
Absolutely. And this is just I've something that wanted to talk about in that video was the type of feedback, and I think we generally do this, but I wanted to mention these 3 things about what effective feedback is. And it is kind. I know sometimes it's easy to not be kind, you know, especially when the students are not doing what they're supposed to do, but definitely kind. The specific one is something that I know is one of the most important aspects. And in the video, if you notice, that guy was even asking them, what do you specifically, what do you mean? And come and show me. And that's one thing that is really important, saying, I guess it would be saying, oh, well, this doesn't feel right, or the lines don't feel right, and that's, or said, well, this line goes down here a certain amount, maybe it could go up a centimeter, whatever the drawing should be, more specific, and that feedback really is helpful. And I think that ties into it. For me, it's the same thing, if I specifically be like, I didn't like it is not okay. I mean, it doesn't help the kids, or right, or even don't turn your back to the audience. If I don't tell them, when you're at this point, you should be facing this way with, maybe your feet turned out like this, your feet towards the audience. If I don't give them specific feedback, it doesn't make any sense to them. And so the same thing with drawing, I would, especially with what you guys do specific, is important. Even though a lot of times what we deal with is feelings. It's still those with color, and everything is about feeling, and that's what we do. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to do is I want to ask you all three of us can do this, is brainstorm what we could do over the 3 weeks we have in April to maybe do 2 or 3 ways that we can maybe modify our feedback that we're given to the students that you can actually kind of take as homework or classwork that you can do in your class. Okay, maybe a little differently than what we're doing. So we can have a discussion about it and figure that out, and I'd love to talk to you about that. So any thoughts or any ideas of something that you're currently doing that you could maybe do differently or give feedback a different way that would allow them, like for example, to help them with their drawings before they get all the way done?
The only thing I can think of at the moment is maybe doing several small drawings for like every day they do. One small drawing that's specifically addressing one issue, like values or shading or, and then that way they sort of are building on that skill continually, and then they can, I suppose, be working at the same time on their larger drawing and their, because a small drawing should only take like 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean,
You can do,
check it.
I can do something too, like a blind critique, because kids don't ever want to talk, especially about their own artwork, but you can maybe put a couple on the table and have little cards or something next to it and say, write what is going right, write what's going wrong, and how you would change it specifically. Like, does this need to be darker? Does this need to be lighter? And then that person would get their stuff back with that feedback there on it, so that nobody's actually having to talk, but they're just left on the table, and then at some point in the period, you can write
Kevin Murphy, Karen Porter,
points, I guess.
and Ms. Miller
What's
are
good,
in the
what's bad,
building.
what's
Please come conference room
good,
A,
what
the main
needs work,
office.
and then what would you
Colonel
do
Alden,
to make
Kevin
that
Murphy,
happen.
Karen Porter, and Ms. Miller.